Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank you guys for joining us. As I say each and every episode, I know you guys have lots of choices as to where to spend your time and spend your energy. So I appreciate you guys spending a little bit of time with us. Today, I am joined by a pretty cool guest, and I'm really excited to dig into the conversation because it's been one of the areas of lots of growth within the restaurant industry, and I'm excited to have Corwin share a little bit about his story and kind of what his company is doing. But Corwin, before we get into what you get to do for a living, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Where did you come from, and a little of the backstory, and then we can talk a little bit about what United Robotics is doing.
Sure. Sounds great. Thank you, Jeremy. And it's fun. It's fun to get to start at the beginning, not just the career. But so a short background. So I'm originally a Midwest kid from Wisconsin. Parents both went to Whitefish Bay, which is outside of Milwaukee, and went to the University of Wisconsin. And then eventually life brought us to Atlanta, Georgia, and grew up there in Atlanta for most of my earlier days, and then went to the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! So just in case we have some Dogs fans out there,
I'm say one of our sales reps is a huge Georgia guy, and so you guys have had college football has been good to you guys the last couple of years. So I'll let you keep going. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. It's exciting times. Maybe normally I wouldn't do that, but these last couple of years, it's our time, right? And I lived the pain in some of the other years, so you have to enjoy the great things in life, right?
Yep, no, for sure. So sorry, I'll let you finish beyond the University of Georgia.
No problem. So my degree is in economics, so studied economics and business in college. And one little intro to our story here, actually, all through college, I worked at a hotel or for a hotel company. So actually worked in the hospitality space from early years and did everything from, bellman to front office management to sales, food and beverage director, a lot of roles within that, really hospitality and food service space, at kind of a, let's call it a young career state. So it was interesting, and it taught me a lot about that industry. Yep. So full circle after a number of moves and kind of progressive roles within a few organizations over my career, I would say all within the robotics and automation space. So my entire career right after that hospitality industry has been in the robotics and automation space, and eventually it brought me to beautiful Southern California that I've done my best to cling on to in life and enjoy the blue sky as much as I can.
I love it. So remind me again, I know you just said it. What'd you get your degree in, and then how did it transition into robotics? Because that it sounded like a pretty far stretch there, but I'm always intrigued about how people. I just posted a podcast this week of a guy that studied like medieval art and wrote a technology piece to to automate kitchens. And I'm like, how do you get from one to the other? So, remind me again what you got your degree in, and how did that transition into robotics before you founded United Robotics?
Sure. So it's actually an interesting story, just in the sense that when I was in school and college, as many of us around my age, there really wasn't much of a push for STEM, right? So science was still there. Medicine, I think, was there, but there was a big push into things like, becoming a lawyer or commercial real estate or the banking and finance industry. But there really wasn't a lot of kind of energy, I would say, into that STEM space, which will probably come up again in our conversation, just from the next generation and the use of robotics and the adoption of technology. These all have become sort of macro trends in our world. So although my father was an engineer, both undergrad and a master's in engineering, worked for Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble, with two pretty famous, consumer goods companies in the United States. And mother's a PhD of science, so very engineering-based family. But at the time, the world was just sort of pushing towards that business side in a different way.
Yep.
So school-wise, didn't go down that path. Ironically, at the right at the point of graduation, went to a career fair, talked to a dozen companies, and what really attracted me was a company called Keyence Corporation that is a pretty famous, at this point, they're a Japanese company, automation technology company, and really that just the technology that they had, the innovation that existed within their product portfolio was really tremendous to me, and this is another important trend we'll talk about. The desire to problem solve was really clear within what they needed their people to do, their team to do. So ironically, kind of stepped right back into this, this engineering sort of a world at a young age, and have been here ever since.
I love it. I love it. So why don't we take the leap forward into what is United Robotics? For those that aren't familiar with what you guys do, why don't we talk a little bit about the company, and then we'll kind of talk about the marrying of restaurants and robotics and where you see it at today, and kind of where it's going.
Sure. So United Robotics Group, although we may be new to most people's ears, we're actually sort of have a long history from a founding perspective, especially with our sister company, which I'll talk about for a moment. And then our size and our scale is actually quite significant. So I'm the CEO of United Robotics Group, Inc. So we are United Robotics Group Americas, Inc. And GmbH. So United Robotics Group was formed in 2019 by a gentleman named Thomas Hahn, who is the original founder of the company. Thomas Hahn also is the CEO and founder of a company called Hahn Automation. Hahn is what most people would call a traditional system integrator, which we actually will probably talk about a little bit more as we get into the how robotics come, or kind of what's changed, over the, let's say, 2 decades I've been in this space. So 30 years ago, Thomas founded Hahn Automation. So United Robotics Group as a whole really is a little bit more of, I would almost call like an innovation arm compared to the traditional system integrator, which again, I can explain more, and hopefully we'll have some follow-up questions on that. But what we are today is sort of a collection, I guess I would say, in a sense, or an umbrella company of 9 robotics startups. So, and one of which is even an acquisition only about a month ago, a company called Robotnik. But we have acquired these 9 robotic companies, and their strengths are across both verticals and, I would say, sort of disciplines. So we have companies that are really software-based companies, and some of that is maybe more custom or less custom. And then we have hardware-focused companies that have developed different products for different verticals, and then even a strong services arm as well. And then even across that, you have different verticals that we can talk about a little bit. One of which that we're very focused on is I would actually say broadly, the public or the social sector, which certainly includes a focus on hospitality.
Yeah, that was going to be where I wanted to drive the conversation. So
sure.
I guess before we jump into why and where restaurants, define robotics for people, because for some that conjures up R2D2 and C3PO from 1977 Star Wars, to the Terminator, to everywhere in between. And so, I'd love for you to define even how you guys define robotics, because I think there's a lot of people that have created their own definitions, but I'd love to have you talk through, how do you guys even internally talk about robotics, and what is robotics for those that are uneducated? And then we can talk about the marrying of robotics and how you guys are trying to influence the restaurant industry and help people out.
Sure. Big question. So
yeah, it is. But I think our audience wants to hear, for people that are in that space, when you even talk about hospitality, for some that means hotels, and for others that means, cruise ships, and for others that might mean a restaurant. Sure. For somebody that's in the robotic space, again, I have my own definition, and I would be happy to share with you where I've seen it play. But I think that having you define it will help people get their head around these things, because a lot of times when I talk to listeners, they haven't even heard of these things, or they may have experienced it on one way or another. They've read about it in the news, but they don't really understand what it is, because they've just been uneducated. So why don't you educate us a little bit on that, and we can talk through it. So I apologize for throwing big questions at you, but I think it's good to educate our audience and make sure that everybody's in the right spot.
No problem. I will do my best. And you may hear me use both the word automation and robotics in a similar fashion. And I've had some intriguing conversations of, sort of what's the difference between automation and actually a robot. And even I would say to probably most listeners and most of us in the world, the word, robot, it means a lot more, right? It has a meaning. We have some images of what that looks like, whether it be from Star Wars or not. We still have an idea of what a robot is.
Yep.
And just to start on the other side, automation, say, for example, a moving conveyor, right? Probably everyone has seen that. Even at the grocery store, you have a checkout lane, a moving conveyor. It has a little sensor on it to tell when product is at the end of it, right?
Yep.
There are some in the world that would argue that that is a robot, right? A very simple robot, a single axis of motion robot, but nonetheless, it is performing a task in an automated fashion to assist, to assist people in what they're trying to do. And in this case, it's the cashier trying to help you check out, and the person trying to get home with their groceries to feed their family. So I'll start there with just a little bit of background that's interesting. And I think one of the smartest things that I heard about robotics is that the robot, just to go back to the Star Wars example, is it actually, in today's definition, I think starts to define interaction with a human in a sense.
Yep.
And Jeremy, I'll talk a little bit about the word Cobiot or Cobiotics, which is actually really sort of a branded name for our company. But the Cobiot segment is something that we've been working on. And to explain that a little bit, I'll back up. So we talk about 3 generations of robots in the world. The first generation, and this was even in my early careers, this is mainly what I focused on, was companies that were deploying robots. And if you think about that, this is not R2D2, or there are no personalities. They're very dangerous. I mean, by design, right? Because they can lift heavy payloads. They can work in really tough environments. They're designed to, in a way, to do tasks completely individually from people, and quite frequently for jobs that people cannot do, which is a topic we'll probably touch on a little bit as we go. But we refer to that as the first generation of robots, or I would just say traditional robotics in a sense.
Okay.
And then the second generation is a word that people may have heard called a collaborative robot, or for short, what's called a cobot. And the collaborative robot was born from the industrial robots, but really one of the kind of original visionaries of this space is a gentleman named Rodney Brooks that started a company called Rethink Robotics, which is actually part of our profile today. But his invention, his vision, the team's invention, was a product called Baxter, which was a very large dual-armed collaborative robot. And this actually fascinated me when I saw it released, because it was designed to work with people, around people, close to people, and theoretically at some phase would actually even interact with people. But most of the applications were, let's just say people close, or at least it wasn't nearly as dangerous as a traditional robot. So that, hence the word collaborative robot. And then what we're working on, this third generation, this Cobiot, is, and it's just, I guess it's just semantics, but we say that it truly works for people. So by design, as we enter this third phase of robotics, the concept is that it is a helper, truly a helper to people, and something that people should be directing what it will do for us. To circle back to your original question, maybe that's the actual definition of a robot in a sense. Back to R2D2, especially that what a robot that was, constantly just trying to solve problems and help his owners, or I'm not sure what the right word would be.
How would you define that? But whatever it is everybody's, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people have seen that and kind of get it. And I mean, and so talk to me a little bit about food service. So, I think there's a lot of applications. I know, even 20 years ago, I had somebody that was working for us. Her brother was he was working in the manufacturing industry, and he was designing computer models to fill bags of salsa or whatever it might be. And they were, it was a lot of this automation, harken back to I Love Lucy and the chocolate factory, where the chocolate's going all over the place and whatnot. But those are robots. They're, to your point, they're doing tasks that are going to get done more efficiently through automation and through technology to do that. Food service, restaurants, serving people. You talked about the public sector. How is United Robotics Group, talk to me a little bit about that transition, and where do you guys really think you guys are making, some unique inroads to helping, we can talk about the why here in a few minutes, but talk to me a little bit about where are you guys dipping your toe in the water in restaurants, and how are you guys working towards trying to solve some of those things with this, Cobiotics idea and this whole idea that they can work alongside of humans to create a better guest experience and to create a better restaurant?
Sure. And I mean, I think that's the perfect question, because there are almost divide that into two answers. One is let's call it the mundane, lower value, repetitive. Some call it, I like it, the dull, dirty, dangerous jobs
Okay.
that are
Love
certainly
that.
within the hospitality space as well. And just one example of that is you think about, slips, trips, and falls. I think there's a spec that 25,000 slips, trips, and falls happen every day in the U.S. in we'll call it the greater hospitality space, food service /
Wow.
hospitality space.
That's insane.
It's a lot, right? And as you could imagine, most of those happen while people are in motion, right? So
Okay.
this is, sort of one end of the spectrum. And then the other end is the guest experience. And the more time I spend in this industry, it's amazing to hear the most passionate people in this space. This is what they talk about and focus on. This is everything to them, right?
Absolutely.
The experience. I wish I could remember what I was watching, but I just heard an amazing story of let's call him a Michelin-rated chef that overheard a table talking about how badly they wanted a New York style hot dog, or maybe it was Chicago. Either one sounds good, depending on everyone's preference. But the chef actually left, got a hot dog, cut it into 4 pieces, brought it back to the table, and the guests couldn't be happier. And the point was that at that moment, it wasn't about the food, but it was about the experience. So, so as we continue to deploy robotics into this space and look into this space, this is what we are focused on, and what we believe that our the adopters of technology like this are focused on is that, let's utilize automation and robotics, right? And again, sometimes there's a sensitivity to the word robot, but automation is a little more comforting in a way to people, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so let's let automation focus on those, quote, lower value tasks, while we allow people to focus on people, on the human experience, right, on each other. And this is what, most of all, this is what actually I've seen in almost every industry as you continue to implement automation, but maybe most in this hospitality space.
Well, and so let's talk about some of those. You said dull, dirty, dangerous jobs. I mean, I remember, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago. I went into a drive-thru at a McDonald's, and they had a robot that was filling my drinks. It was the weirdest thing and it was so cool, but it was at the drive-thru. It pulled a cup out of the sling, put ice in it to the perfect amount, and then filled my Diet Coke or whatever the heck I was drinking at the time into that. Would that be something that you guys would consider? And again, I'm picking that, a lot of the pizza places have the conveyor belt pizza stuff. Talk to me a little bit about what kinds of things are you guys seeing that you guys can automate? Because it's to me, I am blown away when I see these things. I love seeing these things, not for any other reason than that is dirty, that's dull, that's dangerous. It's dumb work that we're using humans to do it because we had no other way to do it. Let's train those humans to now interact with the guests and create a better guest experience, to your point earlier, while we take those things. So talk to me a little bit about what are some of the use cases. Tell me more about the use cases specifically. What are you guys doing? And then, I guess just what are you guys doing? Tell me some of the areas. Is it cooking? Is it cleaning? Is it prep? Talk to me a little bit about all of that.
Sure. So let me think how to approach that best for the audience.
I know I keep throwing a lot at you.
These are great questions, Jeremy. I'll start by saying that as technology advances, we want to marry the use cases or the applications that the technology can do, with the value that it brings to an organization, and to the time that it would free up for a person to focus on a customer's guest experience. So, and I only say that because we talk about, I guess I like to talk frequently about the eyes and the hands of an automated system, right? These are incredibly difficult things to even think to replicate. I mean, in the last 5 years, I would say we've started to really see progress in 3D vision and, really dexterous grippers. And that could lead to things like truly like bussing tables itself, cleaning off tables,
Yep.
actually making food. Some of these, really complicated tasks that are also high value, from a human perspective, just because we are so good at some of these things. The other side of that, again, is back to the kind of dull, dirty, dangerous, repetitive, motions that could be automated today. So the example that you brought, the automated drink filling, this has been around for a few years here, but also is still in a very innovative phase for what could your throughput be? How many could you produce over X amount of time? What's the footprint that it could be? So there's still a lot of innovation, even to an area like that's been focused on for a while. And this is this is where the wink comes in. Perhaps there's something that we're working on in that area, and would love to talk to your audience about if they'd like more information.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's certainly one area. And I would say, although we don't play in the kitchen much today in the product that we've released so far, there are some really neat companies like United Robotics. I'll give them a free plug there. They've done really neat things with the Flippy robot, for the industry. I think probably a lot of your audience may have seen press releases on that. So that's kind of the back of the house side. So right now for us, we're focused on the front of the house with our mobile robot solution, and actually what we do call kind of the first serving Cobiot, which is a phrase that we could talk more about as well. But essentially, what we call this third generation of robotics that just designed to work for people. So this is what we're working on right now from a kind of a main product release. And the very simple sense for this product is it is a material handling assistant for servers in the industry, right? So this could be bringing the food to the tables. This can be helping to bus the tables back to the kitchen. We see fun examples like even setting the tables, where of course you can load it up with everything you need to set up 100 tops. You've got catering examples where we're actually passing food. All kinds of applications like that. But the short story is it's sort of an assistant. We're augmenting the staff, a runner for the staff to use as they please.
I love it. I love it. There's been a couple of brands that I've gone to partially to test technology like you guys are creating. There's two that I've been to most recently, and my experience was very, very positive, and I'd love to talk through a little bit of it. It happened to be an all-you-can-eat Japanese place just south of me, and so it was an all-you-can-eat Japanese place, and I was ordering from a server, but my sushi plates or my ramen plates or whatever were showing up via robot, and the robot would cruise through the restaurant. It would bring me this plate of sushi, and my son and I went and had dinner there for his birthday. And talk to me a little bit about, is that what you guys are trying? I mean, is that one of the use cases that you see people using? And then there's another place that's a pizza place, and they sat me with the robot. And because I'm the host of the show, I like to go check out this new stuff. So talk to me a little bit about the use case for bringing food to the table, just food, food delivery. It's one of the biggest sticking points in almost every kitchen, is from the time the food gets prepped to the time that it gets to the guest. That time window is very, very critical to ensuring guest satisfaction and back to the guest experience. Is that something that you guys are actively working on? And talk to me a little bit about what you guys have had to solve for, because not all meals are created equal. Not all service experiences are created equal. Not all, in this place that happened to be small plates of sushi, so it was a little bit easier because they could load up 2 or 3 of them onto the robot, or 5 or 6 of them to the robot. Whereas other places might be big plates, and, thinking about a Cheesecake Factory, they might have huge plates that might not be able to be, or maybe they can. I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about that, that use case, because I see that as a huge opportunity for people if they haven't considered it to at least dip their toe in the water. But I don't know. Maybe you can educate our audience as to what does that look like from a restaurant perspective, and what does that look like from a guest experience perspective?
Sure. So first of all, Jeremy, it is a key application, I would say, right? So this is perhaps the or one of the most common for a mobile robot like this, for an indoor delivery robot. And I'll start on the front of the house, and just for some fun comments, specs here that we've heard from customers, is that things like empty drinks have gone away tremendously. Yep. Yelp reviews have gone up. Average tips per table have gone up. Average turn per table has decreased.
Wow.
So so not only is the business making more money, actually their staff is making more money, which is good just from the
Yeah.
economic side. But then also the guests are
But the
saying they're
guests are
having
happier.
a better experience, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting if you can actually search Yelp and look at all the collective reviews, and there's some interesting trends. And some of this was sort of COVID related. Last few years of our lives have been challenging. There's no question about that. But the guest experience has actually declined, and you see
Yep.
things like took too long to get food, too much time.
Drinks are always empty.
Yes, right. And which a lot of times, again, that there's a revenue side to that, along with the guest experience side, both from a happy customer returns to I would have loved to have we'll call it another beer, if that goes empty. We're talking about a lot of lost revenue there. So there's really I think really clear benefits from the front of the house staff, or the kind of the front side. The back of the house, or let's just say the process of supporting those workers, those servers, there are a ton of challenges, like you mentioned. And if I could put them into one big bucket, what I would say is that the environment that they are operating in, it was not designed for robotics, right?
Yes.
It was designed for people, and people. We are unbelievably flexible, incredibly dynamic, right? Like if you think about us as technology, it's unbelievable. Again, we all the technology in the world still cannot replicate what we're doing right now, moving our hands, talking. Our body moves, quote, autonomously without us even having to think about what we want it to do, right? So that poses probably one of the biggest challenges, and actually what I would almost in turn bucket that into is the word adoption. And so I think the reality is that what we've seen is that the more, like you could imagine, on board a team is with utilizing this technology to make the customer experience better, to drive revenue, to decrease costs, to really have a better guest experience overall. The desire to utilize technology in that is actually a really critical point, maybe the most, right? Because
no, I would agree.
things like you mentioned, like let's say that there's more than one robot full of plates. Probably one person wasn't going to be able to carry that either, but a person plus a robot could, right? Or or if you're really busy, and this is a second use case, but you look at the busing side of it, it's a very similar story, right? To be able to clear the table and turn it quickly, to support the team. So I think that yes, there are challenges. No technology it's never perfect, or at least I haven't I haven't ever found that either with any device. Sorry Windows, but I'm just waiting for my computer to decide to update while we're on our podcast. Right?
and inevitably it will, right?
Yes. And sometimes I want a big screen, and other times I need a small compact one to go in the backpack, right? So it's, as much as we are progressing, which is amazing, actually it makes me think of things like the flip phones now that almost, try to give you both the best worlds that way. But maybe what I'm trying to say is it's important to look at what it can do for your team, and to help your team see that, what it can do for them and how it can improve the overall business, as much or more maybe than it is to kind of question what things it can't do. And I say that because I've seen companies that automate have always been on a positive growth path. The word innovate is a perfect word for this. Companies that innovate, people that innovate their lives. When you have that sort of desire to push things forward, and sometimes to take a little risk and go into that slightly, we'll call it earlier adopter phase, it's a healthy mentality. It's a healthy culture. So maybe this answered the second part of your question, but that would be my biggest suggestion to companies, to users, restaurants, hotels, amusement parks, cruise ships. You mentioned a lot of them earlier, is really dig into this technology. And I think the truth is it can find a way to help your guest experience. It can find a way to even deliver ROI. It can find a way to wow your guests, because guests are, they love technology as well. They really do. And they certainly are looking for that great experience. So maybe that's that answer there is, lean in a little bit at this point, even though admittingly no technology will solve all our problems with one go.
I thank you for saying that, because I say that all the time. Technology for technology's sake does nothing, but technology truly to solve business problems is the reason to do it. Paint a picture for me, because I've watched companies like yours and others that have gotten into this robot delivery mechanism. I know, again, I'd love for you to paint a picture for those that are on audio only, or even those that are watching us on video, that there is a difference between what a robot looks like that's delivering food to you than what C3PO might look like, or even what R2D2 might look like. And so can you paint a picture for our audience as to what is it? Because I know what it is, but I'd love for you to talk through, what does that robot look like to the end user? What does it look like driving around in the kitchen, in the dining room, in the host stand, and those areas?
So another great question, Jeremy. You're well prepared today. So I'll back up a little bit there and talk a little bit about the history of robotics again, just because when we look at those traditional robotics, these are big metals, right? Chunks of metal with big hydraulic cylinders on them, and there's nothing attractive or, let's say, interactive about this type of product at all. Nor did there need to be, because it was completely behind a fence or down a long manufacturing corridor or warehouse space or something along those lines. Fast forward to today, what we're doing in the hospitality space, and it's completely different. Everyone is interacting with this, right? It comes right up to your table with your food, right? It drives by you in the hallway. And,
Yep.
and I think this is really important, back to that adoption rate and to that really that the comfort that I believe people should embrace, I guess, about robotics and technology, is that at least in our product's sake, and I've seen others as well. So this we're not the only ones that have recognized this, but it's designed in a way to be comforting. It's designed actually to interact. So our product, which I'm sure hopefully your audience will check out, and we'll give them a link at the end of the show, but it has eyes that communicate intent. If you scratch its nose, it'll actually smile and kind of giggle at you a little bit. It does talk to you if it comes to the table to deliver an order and you're using that order. It says, "Here is your order." Or if you use it in busing mode, it asks you, "Do you have anything for me?" And I'll just, one little kind of side exciting thing is, a lot of those things that I mentioned are software based. And like a lot of your audience has probably heard, like ChatGPT, as we continue to have advances in technology on that software side, rolling that back into the previous hardware versions is a huge part of our story. And let's just say, technology in general, of course, right? Our phones are always trying to update as well. Or like my joke about Microsoft. So this is a good thing as well, right? We want this because it actually makes our product more valuable. But to circle back there, is that interaction. I think it's important for people to feel that this is safe, this is comforting, this is, again, I would say, truly trying to support people, to work for people, and to help them in their daily jobs. And one little piece of history I'll share about our company is the team that makes this product is a company that was known as Aldebaran. They're in Paris, France. They created two really famous robots. One is called Now, N-A-O, and the other is called Pepper. And these were both social robotics as well. These are for the public space. Most of them are in academic. Now, I think, as an example, quite frequently will be in a high school or even a middle school. Actually, in our day-to-day, some of them are going to elementary school because people are learning to code so much earlier. But so the team, though, let's just say they're very passionate about how do people perceive these products, not just, does it lift up the automotive car part or something like that, like the traditional robotics would be. And this is actually part of our Cobiotics philosophy altogether, is to, for that connecting people and robots, or really creating a product that people want to utilize that works for people, is really important. I'll touch on one that's a little interesting to your question too, and then you can redirect as desired. But sometimes I would say the product may seem slower. Maybe slower is not the right word, but more methodical than people are. So as we talked about earlier, people are unbelievable at multitasking. Well, some of us better than others, but I'm on the wrong side of that sometimes. But if you look at the best in a hospitality or food service sort of industry, it's unbelievable the things that they can juggle in their minds, with their hands, with the motion of their body, and they're quick, right? They are fast, and I think this is a reality. And when you look at the robot, it's okay. I could do theoretically 10 things in the time that it does 5, or some ratio like that. But I think maybe this is another one, as we sort of adjust our mentality. The important way to look at it is, wow, I could do 20 things because that robot just did 5 things for me. And that 20 thing is almost always the customer interaction, right? I could be that much more on the guest side while that robot did those trips back and forth to the kitchen for me. Because again, that part, it's good that it's methodical, actually. And sorry, one more touch is, you mentioned the sushi restaurant. You've probably seen one that has like a conveyor system before as well, right? So this is a great example of like automation, fixed automation, right? A conveyor that's in place, or a robot that can go from A to B flexibly. But again, that concept is the same. So in a thought like that conveyor belt may not be the fastest thing in the world, but eventually, your favorite sushi is going to come rolling right on by the table there. And, hopefully your servers are taking great care of you at other times as well, keeping those drinks full, talking to you, telling you about the specials, engaging with one another, right?
And trying to drive the behavior, back to your point that the guests are ultimately more satisfied. Because I live in the technology space, brand that's close to you that we did almost 10 years, over 10 years ago, it was a brand that put iPads at every table. And the early results that we got were very similar to what you guys got with some of the robotics, but it was an iPad at every table, and the staff member didn't really do much other than refill drinks and run food to you. But they were really trying to give the gift of choice to the guests and allow them to control their experience and all of that. Awesome deal there. What some of the feedback that we got was you're trying to replace people's jobs. You hear it in the stories and the comments about Flippy. You talked about Flippy earlier. Talk to me a little bit about why robotics isn't there. It's there to enhance. It's not there to replace. Because I think that's the misnomer oftentimes. I mean, I've been in this restaurant technology industry for over 25 years. I remember when we went from hanging tickets to ringing stuff up, and it was like this, people are like, oh, you're going to replace people's jobs and nobody's going to need to do this. And it's like, no, it's making things better, not necessarily making things worse, delivering to the consumer's expectations. So how would you combat that as you're talking with clients that say, oh, no longer do I have to run the food, so now I'm not going to be able to show up and do these things? And I'd love for you to help our audience to understand why robotics and this Cobiotics idea that you guys have can truly change the way you go about doing business and truly give them the time, energy, and opportunity to treat the customer like a customer and get rid of those dull and dirty and dangerous jobs that you talked about earlier.
Sure. And another great question for sure. And I think this can be a tough one, but I think it's something we need to all talk about, right? Because it is a real component of technology. And like you mentioned, going from hanging tickets to a point of sale system. I mean, this is automation, right? Maybe it's not a rolling robot, but it is certainly automation. And maybe I get too far off with this, but I'll at least share my thoughts on this. Is that the nature of work has been changing for all of time, right? And certainly I wasn't alive however many thousands of years ago, and so we won't go to try to go too far back, but it does always make me think about things like arrowheads or the ability to create spark that creates fire. These are tools that we use. The wheel as kind of a simple example, right? So throughout,
we're going to go back to framers and tell them they got to use hammer and nails instead of a nail gun, and they're going to tell us to get the hell out of here. Right?
Absolutely. There's some amazing videos of hanging drywall from like the 60s, 70s, where it was an incredibly manual process, and one nail at a time. It's amazing, right? So unbelievably skilled, and I respect it all so much. But I think perhaps that's I always think of the word embrace, is that all change, I guess, happens, right? And there's all kinds of great quotes about that. But technology, there's no, in a good way, we haven't been able, technology hasn't stopped yet. If anything, it's accelerated. And I think as we even talk internally as a company about, our vision and or mission in the world, we think a lot about driving humanity, improving humanity, improving the human experience in general, allowing humans to spend more time. And all of this, the back half of that is by creating robots, by automating main done experiences, right? By, you can sort of insert, a number of words there, but I think that is ultimately the goal. Is technology should make all of our lives better.
Yep.
Now, it's sort of an easy thing to say out loud until maybe you're the one who has that feeling of perhaps your job changing. And I would use the word changing, but because of technology. But I think the other side of this coin that always comes up in these conversations, but is so real because we hear it constantly, is from the availability of labor perspective.
Absolutely.
I have honestly not talked to a business owner for, I'm literally feel like my whole career, someone has continually said, we just can't find the people, right? And sometimes it's, we can't find them for third shift, or I can't find them that want to work in the kitchen, in the back of the house or the front of the house, or, it's, everyone might have their slightly different pain, but we hear that over and over again. And, unemployment rates are incredibly low. And, one spec I hear in the hospitality space, the greater hospitality space, is that 500,000 jobs go unfilled every month. I think this was the Bureau of Labor Statistics stat from a couple months ago. And this is, I see the statistics, and then you go talk to business owners, and it's the same story over and over again. So I think this is real. I don't think this is real. It
exists.
Real.
Anytime you go out to eat, it's the same thing. Not
Correct.
Only the staff that's there, they're understaffed always. I went to a nationally recognized brand a month ago with our staff, and the restaurant was empty, but they were on a 40-minute wait because they couldn't get staff to serve people. And and they were paying well. So it wasn't about pay. It was just the availability of labor wasn't there. And so how do we automate some of those tasks? Yep. The other thing I would throw at you, Corwin. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say, the other thing I would throw at you is if you're not considering it, and I think this is the call to action for you guys, is other people are doing it. So if you're not there, you're fighting a losing battle because you're stubborn that you say, you know what? How many of you 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago said, I'll never get a smartphone. I'm going to stay on the flip phone. And how many of you have a flip phone still today? Very few of you, especially the listeners to this podcast. And so if you're one of those naysayers, it's like, oh, these things are never going to work. They are working every single day in restaurants and making guest experiences better, to your examples that you talked about earlier. So I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I want our listeners to understand that if you're not doing it, your competitors are, and you've got to figure out how does it fit within your brand to deliver the guest experience that you're looking for.
For sure. And, you just sort of made me think about the turnover side of it as well, is if you're in that place where you are already short-staffed and you have great people that you want to hold on to, I think some people may hesitate to utilize technology for that, but really, as I mentioned, kind of the adoption story, the other side of that is even more important. How can you empower, enable, support? What can you do to make those employees enjoy their job the most, and keep that turnover down and keep happy employees? And then, of course, we already touched on the guest side of that. There are many brilliant quotes out there that take care of your people, and your people will take care of your customers. And I think this is really evident when you go into businesses, how what the culture is. And what I was going to say earlier is, so we actually just had a deployment started 2 days ago, and yesterday I was there, and this was a very prominent hotel chain and hotel group, and we were talking with the bartender who was also serving the tables around the restaurant, and constantly running in and out of the bar area, and of course, every time that person had to do that, one side or the other, something was being neglected, right? Either the table was being neglected, or the people at the bar. And the answer was simply that someone had called in that day, and unfortunately, it happens quite frequently. We just don't have enough people, right? This was the quote. And I saw the culture of this business firsthand. Wonderful people and running a great business. And just again, the reality is that they just cannot find enough people to work that second shift, especially for them. Which, by the way, that touches to another thing. Hospitality industry, some of it we're talking 24/7 sort of. operations, right? I mean, even two shifts, can be challenging when you get into the evenings, and this is challenging for people's lives as well. But you have a family at home, or or you have to work two jobs, or any of these things. This is challenging times.
Well, and the pandemic has only accelerated it, as we talked about earlier. And so it's accelerated. We've lost a lot of jobs, and I think all of our listeners know that. So I know we're getting close to time. What does engagement look like? What do people need to be considering when they engage with your team and say, I need to solve this problem? I heard Corwin talk. I got to have this. Talk to me a little bit about where do they go? What does the journey look like from zero to having robots do everything in their restaurant, not having any staff? I know that's not the case, but I say it in jest. But at the end of the day, people need to consider this. So what does the journey look like, and how do they engage with your team, and how do they take the next step?
Sure. And as I mentioned, we'll share a link where they can fill out the contact form. And of course, we would reach out to them right away. But the process in general, step one, I always say that there needs to be a good discovery phase. So our team would come out. Of course, we can introduce our technology, but most importantly, we want to learn and understand your business. What are those challenges you're facing? What meals are the busiest for you? Where do you have the greatest labor shortage? Perhaps where do you have some people that are heading towards retirement, and at least you're on the fortunate end of knowing that that's coming, which I think is we didn't touch on it, but certainly something that a lot of businesses are facing. But it's really to understand that need that the customer has, and whereas step two, thinking about the solution side of it, how can we apply the technology that exists today to help support those problems? And I use the word solution and technology broadly, because of course we have a restaurant robot, and that is something where we are going to market with and is an important part of our portfolio. But quite frequently, that solution may be beyond that as well, right? We may need to work with a partner for you to integrate with a POS, to be able to call the robot back to the kitchen when the order is ready from a kitchen management system or something on those lines. So it's after that discovery, you have a little bit of that architecting the solution. And then let's say that all goes well. The third phase, I use the word adoption, a number of times, and the word deployment, right? We want to work with the customer very closely on the deployment, training, adoption phase as well. So we have a solution, we've identified a good business case, a good value to the company, and then we want to just make sure that it's adopted. And the process there ranges from training, multiple shifts, multiple people, managers. From that side of the coin, all the way to, just as an example, we give daily reports of the usage of the product. Were there any issues? Did you lose wireless signal? Did you have a blocked robot for some reason? We constantly track that, so we can provide that feedback back to the business as well to see, hey, look, if you were able to work through some of these issues here, or use it a little bit longer, which I do want to talk about as a service in a moment, but you actually are essentially reducing the cost of that robot by the longer you use it, right? Or the greater distance it travels. So that's even a spec we provide to people, because that's a huge part of that value is, wow, that robot drove 3 miles last night, right? And this is tremendous. So I would break it down into kind of those three areas. And real quickly, I'll touch on that adoption side just in one key area for our company. I mentioned our roots, with Aldebaran, producing a lot of social and public robotics, robotics that are designed for use in the public and for interaction. We've done everything we can, and we won't stop, because this is software, creating a product that is as easy to use as possible. You mentioned, you joked with me even that I'm an economics degree, and here I am in the robotics world. I fully consider myself an expert user, and that's not some big compliment to me. It's because the product was designed so well to be able to, if you can use a smartphone, if you can use apps, you can use this product. And
that's amazing.
Yes, and I think that's huge from that adoption side, because we want everyone to be able to use it, for them to feel empowered, to utilize technology in their daily operation, because ultimately your team is who you want using this, and that's how you will retain people. That's how you'll provide the best customer experience, and all of the things that we've been talking about.
Well, and I'm going to ask you to end on one last point, Corwin, which is the whole idea of this is going to cost me $1 million and I can't afford this. I know that that's an argument we get from our audience when they hear about new and awesome technology. They're like, that's great, but that's for the big boys. I can't do this. Dispel that myth that says these things pay for themselves very, very quickly. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys get it economic enough that it makes sense for them when they adopt these tools.
Sure. And I think I'll start with just technology in general. I mentioned earlier that as technology improves and increases, nature of work changes, and we continue sort of automating tasks that people do. Fortunately, as that progresses, the cost of it quite frequently goes down. So I would easily say that these are shockingly affordable. The market for this is shockingly affordable, which again, you sort of have to have that intersection of ROI, the business case. Does need to be there as well compared to just playing with cool technology, and it is definitely there, and we've kind of been able to show that quite frequently, and glad to talk about that offline with anyone that would like to talk more about what do the real numbers look like. But fortunately, one thing I would add to that is that the robot as a service is something that we offer and has entered the world. Maybe as of 5 years ago or so, people started to think about this concept, and something that we fully believe in, both from a service to the guests or service to our customers, and then also even from like a sustainability perspective, is we want to make sure that product doesn't end up in a landfill. If the hardware becomes outdated, which inevitably, due to the pace of technology, will happen. Yep. So if you look at, here, I'll give you one quote that one of our salespeople says that I actually think is really powerful and simple, is that the robot, from a cost perspective, boils down to about $20 a day. So if you think about even utilizing this product for a few hours, right, or retaining one person who feels overworked that is valuable to your organization, something like $20 a day is incredibly affordable to business owners. And
it's an hour of labor for the most part.
It certainly is, and there's no question that value is there. Again, as long as we've identified a good case for it, right? Deployed it properly and trained your users to use it, and kind of empowered your team to use it when the manager maybe is not there, which is always important. But yes, this is technology that's ready to go. Will it do everything? Of course not, but that's the nature of technology. But there is true value it can bring to organizations right now.
I love it. So give us the website. Where do they learn more? Where do they go jump on and talk to one of your sales team members? Because I'm pretty certain that the more that we have listeners hearing this story, the more that you guys are going to hear and want to know more. So talk to me a little bit about where can they go find more about you, more about the product, more about what it is that you guys do?
Sure. So I think the easiest way, we created a landing page for you directly. So it is LP, like landing page, lp.unitedroboticsgroup.us/podcast. So this is a landing page. You've got a simple form, a couple fields to fill out, and that will come directly to our team here, and we would reach out to you right away. Of course, we have a website. It is unitedroboticsgroup.us for customers here in the U.S. And then internationally, we have unitedrobotics.group as well. So any of those, depending on where you are in the world, will help you access the right information. But again, lp.unitedroboticsgroup.us/podcast will take you right to us.
I love it. Corwin, I can't thank you enough for continuing to drive the innovation. I often talk to guests on the show and I go, what are my kids and my kids' experience in a restaurant going to be? Because it's always just amazing to me to think about the speed of automation, the speed of enhancements, and the experience that I had as a kid is different than they have now. And I can only imagine what companies like yourself and others are going to do to just continue to grow the guest experience. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your guys' story. To our audience, guys, we know that you guys have got lots of choices out there. So thank you guys for spending an hour with us each and every week when we post one of these podcasts. If you haven't already done so while you're out checking out United Robotics Group online, go subscribe to the podcast. We did start just posting these also on YouTube. So if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, check us out on social media. Make sure that you guys are connected in every way so that you guys don't miss an episode. Corwin, thank you guys for your time. And to our listeners, make it a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks so much.